Hello to people of YouTube, this is Jolster109, and I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. Okay, by the title you should already know that this is not your typical reaction. What I'm going to be doing, and I don't know if I'm going to keep on doing this, but this is just a one-time thing for now. Oh man. Okay. By now, you all should know I'm a brony. Okay, let's move on. This is... My laptop is dusty. This is a horror... Not horror, but it's like... Okay, it's a fan fiction... rated as Grimdark. And if you don't know what that is, I don't know exactly what that means either. I don't know where it came from. But basically that means that there's no hope for anybody in the story. No hope whatsoever. And this was a Halloween special for, I don't know when. I think it was last year. I forgot to check, but I'll let you guys know. I was just starting to listen to it. I got like halfway through the first part. And I was like, no. Because I did something like this before where I listened to a Grimdark story called Cupcakes. And I was thinking to myself, I should be doing a reaction to this. Because I'm sure my faces... Well, yeah, I've had many different faces. But I do not take gore very well. So... That's what this is, okay? If you can't handle that, be advised. Anyways, gosh, there's so much to explain. I'm just jump right into it. Basically, if you are like, if you're queasy, if you are faint of heart, this is not for you. Yeah, that's all I got. And it's a horror story with ponies. I mean, come on. Come on. Should not be difficult to do. Oh. By the way, it's like almost 10 o'clock, so I'm going to try to keep it down. Because pretty soon everyone's going to go to sleep, so I'm going to try to keep this down. By the way, this is a long thing, okay? There's 5 parts. Each part is about 30 minutes, except for the final part, which is like about 15 minutes. But each part is around 30 minutes. So this is going to be a while. So get some popcorn or something, man. Because, oh boy. It's also why I have everything turned off except my lamp here. So you guys see my face. Because if I turn it off, you guys can't see me. Well, barely. You guys, yeah. I'm not barely. No, I'll keep this on. Anyways, I have my water here to... in case something starts to come up my throat. Man, let's do this. Okay. Like I said, it's about half hour long. It's not for the faint of heart, and it has ponies. That's all you need to know. 3, 2, 1, go.
Warning. The following reading contains subject matter that some listeners might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
There you go. There's a warning right there. Emogak.
A bat flew across the face of a monstrous harvest moon, its leathery wings sweeping through the chill autumn mist, leaving swirls and spirals in its wake. The creature of the night flew back and forth, eating the last bugs of the season. Fat as it was, the bat would need every scrap of weight it could put on before the harsh winter months. Already a few of its fellows had secluded themselves in caves and hollow trees, snug and plump, lost in half-sleep that would last until spring. A moth stirred up from its grass, its gossamer wings, making it a pale ghost in the moonlight. A quick snap of tiny jaws and the mouthful was gobbled down. With a surge of its wings, the bat flew on into the night. As it neared a barn blazing with light, the creature became somewhat curious. Usually at this time of night, the barn would be empty, dark and inviting for one of its kind. Instead, the bat could hear sounds of ponies busily at work inside. It would have flown closer for a better look, but a sudden chill ran down its spine, making it think twice. An instinct that even it barely understood screamed louder and clearer in the bat's tiny head. Danger! Best to move on and find more prey. Best to find a safe spot and sleep in the deep, dreamless sleep of hibernation. Best to go far, far from here to do it. There is nothing here for a tiny bat. Nothing but death.
Keep in mind, I made it halfway through this part before I realized I need to do a reaction video.
Apple Bloom!
Called Applejack, putting the last batch of caramel apples on a tray lined with waxed paper to cool. Benches set up in the barn lined the walls, half filled with the sugar-coated fruit.
Where has that filly gone off to?
She muttered to herself. A cauldron, half empty but for a hissing puddle of sweet brown syrup, cooled over a pile of smoldering coals just outside the barn door. The barn itself was warm and snug, filled with lantern light and sweet scent of sugary treats, quite the contrast to the chilled night outside. Even so, Applejack couldn't help drawing the cool air into her lungs with a satisfied smile as she stepped out to look for her sister. She loved this time of year. Winter would be here soon enough, it was true, and that had its own work and worry, just like spring and summer. But the autumn months, after harvest, were a time of relaxation and fun for the Apple family. With the crops in, safe and sound, money would be rolling into Sweet Apple Acres before too long. It was a tradition in their family to share the wealth, and what better way than to provide all kinds of apple-themed treats and games for kiddies at Nightmare Night. Nightmare Night, it was the first holiday to come after the harvest, so the Apple family always did it big. Of course, the holiday had always been more about treats than tricks at Sweet Apple Acres. Every year, Granny Smith would have tubs set up in Ponyville for the townsfolk to bob for apples. She had taken to turning in early and letting Applejack make sure that they stay full and crisp, delicious apples. Even so, Granny Smith was still an important part of the festival. Every year since Big Mac was old enough to pull a plow, he'd offer hay rides for the community as well. Even Apple Bloom seemed to be taking more of an interest in the festivities. Last year, she'd gone around with Pinkie Pie collecting candy with her friends, but this year she seemed to be really interested in helping Applejack make up a few homemade treats to pass out at the festival in town. A few of the recipes Apple Bloom was trying out seemed a mite odd, but Applejack didn't mind trying new things so long as they were able to finish making their batch of usual treats as well. The only problem was, after helping Applejack spare a few apples and dip them in the bubbling caramel, Apple Bloom seemed to quickly lost interest and wandered off to do her own thing. Really, Applejack shouldn't have been surprised. Apple Bloom had a habit of getting distracted by the least little thing. They should have been done making treats hours ago, but as it was, she still had about half the apples left to dip. Worse, she was running low on caramel and firewood.
Apple Bloom!
Called Applejack again as she went to the side of the barn where the woodpile was kept to get a few fresh sticks.
Wherever you run off to, get your flank back here, Missy. We got a lot of apples to dip before we store 'em in the barn to dry, and we're gonna burn through the midnight oil with all your diddly-daddling.
The country
This
pony
is gonna go
paused and
downhill
listened.
very
The
quickly.
fog that curled through the orchard tonight did strange things to the familiar sounds of the
just
farm,
starting.
muffling noises that Applejack would normally find comforting and amplifying
I'm getting
those she
myself ready.
couldn't identify. She didn't
gonna
hear
have
the
jazz
sounds
here.
of tiny hoofs coming her way, nor did she hear her little sister's voice calling out in response. What she thought she heard was giggling, high, girlish giggling, just on the edge of her hearing. It wasn't something any pony wanted to hear all alone on a dark night.
Easy, girl. You're just spooking yourself.
Applejack reassured herself under her breath as she quickly piled a few dry branches on her back for the fire. She really wished that Granny Smith didn't go to sleep so early and that Big Macintosh wasn't off in town helping set up for tomorrow's celebration. More than anything, she wished Apple Bloom would stop wandering off on her own. A farm was no place for a young filly to go exploring by herself, especially at night. Applejack had heard too many horror stories of colts playing around on farm equipment and hurting themselves.
Oh, I bet.
Perhaps more dreadful were the stories of fillies falling into old sinkholes or boarded up wells, and no pony finding them until months later, if they found them at all. A thought suddenly occurred to Applejack as she headed back towards the front of the barn.
Apple Bloom, you better not be playing a trick on me. It ain't Nightmare Night just yet.
When there was no answer, she tried.
I'll tell Big Macintosh on you.
There was still no answer. At
Applejack!
least, no answer she wanted to acknowledge as being more than a figment of her imagination. As she rounded the side of the barn, a sudden burst of flame whooshed into life, painting the fog bright orange. Applejack jumped back, the firewood she carried on her back scattering at her hooves. She almost bolted there and then, but calmed down when she realized the flames were under the cauldron. Some pony had gotten the fire going again while she'd been back at the woodpile. Had Applebloom gone to fetch more wood and she missed her going around the other side of the barn? As Applejack grew closer, she saw whomever had built up the fire had used too much fuel. The flames were licking up the side of the cauldron, bright and hungry. Already she could see that the caramel that had been left in the pot was bubbling up. At this rate, it would burn and blacken, going completely to waste.
Oh, Applebloom, sweetie, you can't use this much wood. You need a low heat for this kind of treat.
She went to drag the cauldron out of the fire and save what she could of the caramel, careful to avoid the leaping and flickering flames, but found the old pot wouldn't budge. It was usually only this heavy when it was full, not half empty like it was. Applejack did the best she could, tugging on the cauldron inch by inch away from the barn. But once it was on a patch of damp dirt, she went about kicking sand over what flames she could, trying to tame the wildfire. The flames subdued a bit, so Applejack decided she'd try to get her sister's help to get the cauldron back in place.
Applebloom, you in here?
Asked Applejack as she cantered into the barn. The lanterns had been blown out. By the light from the fire, Applejack could tell the barn was empty on the inside. Empty, that is, save for a pile of sticky popsicle sticks that used to have caramel apples on the end, sitting boldly on the benches. Even the apples that hadn't even been dipped yet were missing. A tiny voice. Hungry. So that's what was going on.
Applebloom, I can't believe you. These treats were for tomorrow to share with all the fillies and colts who came looking for sweets
for the
to
faint
buy.
of heart.
How could you and your friends be so selfish to eat them
Gore's
all
about
before
to
they even
happen.
had a chance to dry?
Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo had to be in on this. Sweet Apple Acres produce might be good enough that a filly would like to try to eat a whole bushel in one go, but one filly couldn't have eaten all the apples Applejack had dipped. Even 3 managing it was a stretch, but that was the only logical conclusion she could come to.
Applebloom, you get out here, young missy. You and your friends. Or I swear I'll be writing a letter to Celestia about how I learned to break fillies' rumps with my bare hooves.
Still, there was nothing but silence. Well, almost. There was that high, girlish giggling again. It sounded like it was coming from the cauldron, but that couldn't be right. It didn't make any sense. How could the girls be hiding in that bubbling hot mess? Applejack moved tentatively towards the cauldron, her eyes darting back and forth. Beyond the glow of the fire, there was nothing but darkness, mist, and fading moonlight. The smoke of partially quenched fire burned her eyes as she looked into the big black pot, ready to jump back at the first sign of a trick. She froze,
Oh my
her
god.
eyes locked on the sad, shriveled-up figure curled into a ball at the bottom of the pot. She was completely covered in bubbling brown sugar, but even so, Applejack could tell right away the tiny figure was her sister.
Applebloom!
She screamed. Applejack reached into the cauldron with her bare hooves, burning her limbs on the still hot metal as she closed them around Applebloom's unmoving form. The pain of her shearing flesh nothing compared to the agony that tore at her heart. How had this happened? Had her sister somehow fallen in? Why hadn't she cried out? Why hadn't she screamed? Applejack ran into the barn where there was a trough of water and quickly dunked Applebloom's body into the cold liquid. The caramel was already starting to set. The sticky gunk wouldn't come off. Applejack did the best she could, but a part of her knew that it was already too late. Her sister wasn't breathing. She tried hammering on her tiny chest, put a mouth to her sister's, and breathed air into her lungs. It did nothing but leave a sickly sweet taste in her mouth,
That's gross.
pieces of half-dried caramel sticking to her lips. That was too much for her. She fell back on her haunches, wiping her mouth with her hoof, trying to get rid of the taste. The taste of death and candy. She felt her gorge rise as tears pricked in the corners of her eyes. How could this have happened? She blamed herself. What kind of horrible sister was she? That's when she heard the laughter again. It filled the barn, vibrating through the straw, beneath her flank, and seemed to echo inside her chest, inside her head. There were words, too, in a childish sing-song voice.
Nightmare night, what a fright.
Applejack got up, backed away, wildly turning her head back and forth, trying to find the source of the song and the horrible, mocking laughter.
Where are ya? Who are ya? Did you do this? Did you do this to Apple Bloom? What did my sister ever do to deserve this?
Applejack howled, tears of anger and sadness spilling from her eyes. She backed slowly out of the barn, her own sister's body, turning around and around. Where was the laughter coming from? She stumbled out into the cool night air, still reeling from what happened to her sister, still haunted by the laughter of children she couldn't see. If she had watched where she was going, she might not have tripped over the well-placed hoof. She didn't realize she had stumbled into the fire until the flames were chasing themselves through her tail and flickering up into her mane. Panicked beyond all reason, she reared back on her hind legs and fell right into the still cooling cauldron. She screamed then, loud enough to wake the dead, as her flesh burst and blistered from the heat and the sticky caramel seeped into her wounds. Everywhere the metal of the pot touched, a layer of her skin stuck, sizzling and smoking as it parted from the rest of her body.
Oh my God.
Blinded by the smoke of her own burning flesh, the stench choking her even as she fought for more air which to scream. She tried desperately to climb out of the cauldron. The sides, slick with her own blood, slipped beneath her painful fumbling. The giggling rose all around her, the laughter loud and menacing. A face peered out of the smoke. It was huge, its eyes pinwheels of madness, its teeth sharp and pointed.
Give us something sweet to bite,
Sang gleefully as it lunged forward. Applejack felt those sharp teeth close around half of her face.
Oh God.
One eye went dark as it popped between a pair of sharp fangs. Her shriek faded to a gurgle as the monster ripped away part of her face and throat, chewed and then swallowed the bloody wad of flesh. With a burst of adrenaline, Applejack managed to scamper out of the cauldron and crumble to the earth. She felt something crack as she hit the dirt, but it didn't matter. She just had to run. She had to get away. She couldn't get up properly, but still she dragged herself through the dirt. A mad idea seized her. If she could get to the barn, just get to the barn and close the door, she could buy herself some time to think. Just think. Tears spilled from her one remaining eye. She labored over the earth. The few feet between the fire and possible safety now seeming miles. Any moment she expected the monster's teeth to find her again. With mild disbelief, Applejack tumbled into the barn and slammed the door behind her. She panted heavily, finding it hard to suck air into lungs while there was a hole in her throat. She started coughing uncontrollably, suffocating on her own blood and terror. Something slammed into the door behind her like a freight train, making her shriek and whimper. The wood splintered as laughter shook the front of the entire barn. She stood on her hind legs with her back to the barn door, bracing her burnt and melted limbs against the door and the slippery straw-covered floor as best she could. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't handle something like this on her own. She needed help. She needed help right now. As she opened her mouth to scream again, this time to yell as loud as she could for help. She felt something suddenly burst between her jaws.
Oh my God.
It happened as if it was in slow motion. The wooden door blossomed, opening like a rare red flower, all spines and petals gaping wide as if to entice a lover. Shards and shrapnel shred open Applejack's back, sending a shower of scarlet spurting from her that splashed across the barn door in a pattern that looked almost like wings. She never had time to register the pain as the thing that caused the hole, something large and cylindrical, was forced clean through her back and up through her ribcage and into her mouth from her throat. She couldn't tell what it was at first, but the taste of dirt on the fence post mixed with her own blood as the sharp end skewered her tongue. She felt her teeth break and her jaw pop loose from the rest of her skull as with another forceful shove, the post shattered the door behind her and the creature began to force its own body through. She felt parts of her she had never felt before burst within her body, as the thick shaft of the wood churned her internal organs to mush. The monster, whatever it was, tore through the barn door like it was tissue paper, a look of triumph on what she could see of its twisted face. She didn't even feel the shards of wood embedded in her back anymore, only the wood that had impaled her. It was almost a relief when her burning lung collapsed, and the rhythm of her heart slowed, stuttering its final beats. The last thing that flickered across her consciousness before she finally died was a figure raising her into the air, smiling, giggling all the while, and taking another bite of the caramel-coated applejack.
This is where I stopped. Actually, no, it was after this part.
Why is it so
Whatever
cold,
this
Mummy?
is.
It's been cold like this for the last few years, dear Art. You know that.
Oh my god.
Those Pegasi have been trying to freeze us out, thinking
Cause-
we'd give them more food if they made it hard for
Because
us.
this gets views.
But we'll
apparently.
show them that Earth ponies are made of sterner stuff.
The Pegasi? Are you hopping on about that again, sweetie?
Who else, dear? You said yourself that when you're out playing the field with my brother that you've seen them darting about in the clouds above.
I tried to figure out what those high mighty unicorns have done to make it snow and cold all the time. You mark my words, those Pegasi have stumped his ass about all this. It's magic that's in those clouds, and magic what's bringing this unnatural cold upon us.
Could the unicorns make them go away, Daddy? Could they make it stop being so cold?
They can do anything, love. Anything at all, them. Why, just a fortnight ago when I and your uncle went to deliver our tid, I seen one of them fancy unicorns taking some of our produce and putting it into a box of his. Powered by magic it was. One end went in strawberries, the other end out popped this strange creamy concoction that was as cold as any snowdrift.
Ah, you and your tales. You'll be giving her ideas about those hornheads are all powerful next. Their hooves are in the dirt as much as ours, but they act like they're even higher in the clouds than the Pegasi. Not so different from us Earth ponies, that lot. But they always have to be putting on
What
airs.
is he talking about?
We don't need you spreading their propaganda for 'em.
But it's true. He said he ran something called a sweets shop. Told me to stop in with my daughter next time I was in town and he'd give her a treat.
Next time you're in town? Do you mean the city, Daddy? The castle? Oh, I've never been. You know how much I've always wanted to go, Daddy. To see the high lords and ladies.
Yes, well, your Da and I will have to have a talk about that. You get on with your chores. Step lively. Brisk work of the limbs will do wonders to keep the chill out your bones.
What are they talking about?
It was a bright autumnal day, about a week before Nightmare Night would begin. The breeze was crisp and sent leaves dancing and tumbling playfully in the streets, even as the sun still shone merrily. Though it was sad to see summer end, the ponies of Equestria knew the necessity of all four seasons, so most of the town of Ponyville walked with a spring in their step, despite the chill that hung in the air. None were perhaps as chipper
I
as
bet
Pinkie
you.
Pie, though. The self-proclaimed friend of
This
every pony,
chapter's gonna
the
end
pink mare was a ball of energy
on
as
a
she went
gory
about putting up the
cliffhanger.
decorations for the coming Nightmare Night celebrations.
I
There
stopped
was so
halfway.
much to do.
From here
Even
on,
the
I don't know
elf,
what's going on.
She had to start a week in advance to get it all done in time. This was no chore for Pinkie, though. She loved decorating like this and watching the town transform before her eyes from its usual quaint self to one just a little bit scary, but fun. Since it was afternoon and school had let out, a few of the town's children were helping her spread fake spider webbing around the post office. They had to clear away a few very real cobwebs before they started. Not many ponies visited the post office themselves these days.
This is a waste of time. I don't know why Daddy insists we help with these decorations when no pony is ever going to see them.
Moaned Diamond Tiara.
The only ponies that bother with the post office are practically Nightmare Night decorations themselves.
The pampered filly sneered at a pair of nearsighted elderly ponies who were busy trying to figure out how many bits it would cost to send a package to Baltimore.
Totally.
Agreed Silver Spoon, as usual.
It's a waste of time when their eyesight is so bad they can't even actually see the decorations anyway.
Silver
You
Spoon
guys are such
turned her
jerks.
nose up and walked over to the box of decorations, inspecting them.
Besides, if they did, it might give them a heart attack.
She said with fake concern.
We should really move on somewhere more interesting, like the mall or the bowling alley. At least then we could do a little shopping or have some fun. After we finish decorating, of course.
She feigned a look of innocence, knowing from experience that her silver tongue and good looks were the key to getting her way.
Now, girls, the mayor has entrusted us to decorate the whole entire town.
Exclaimed Pinky, spreading her hooves in the air as if to encompass all of Ponyville.
It wouldn't be the whole town if we only hung spider webs and pumpkin lights in storefronts and shopping malls.
Pinkie Pie bubbled as she went about festooning the quiet post office with black and purple streamers.
Besides, it's way more fun to transform an old, boring post office into someplace exciting than it would be to make an already interesting place more exciting.
She smiled awkwardly as the postmaster gave her a look from behind the counter.
No offense.
Just then, Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo tumbled in front of Pinkie Pie all at once. They were supposed to be spreading the webbing in the rafters, but had somehow managed to get themselves hopelessly tangled up with one another. Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara led the other children in laughter at their misfortune. It didn't take Pinkie long to extract the trio of friends, though she almost got herself just as badly tangled in the process.
What happened? I'm sorry, Pinkie Pie. It was all my fault. Me and my friends got to talking about all the candy we was gonna get come Nightmare Night, and I must have gotten a little distracted.
Apple Bloom grinned sheepishly.
Yeah!
Chimed in Scootaloo.
We had a ball last year going around with you and collecting candy.
Even after we left half of it for Nightmare Moon, we still had plenty to share.
Added Sweetie Belle cheerfully.
And I'm sure we'll have lots again this year, even after we leave our tribute. Leave it to you blank blanks to still be giving up your candy to Nightmare Moon. Every pony knows it's just Celestia's sister. She's not going to gobble you up if you don't give her some of your candy.
Diamond
but
Tiara
you didn't know
explained,
that.
rolling her eyes.
We kept all our candy last year.
Added Silver Spoon.
As you can see, we're doing just fine. It was truly amazing, too. You know the neighborhood where I live? They give out full-size candy bars by the hookful. We were still eating Nightmare Night candy at heartwarming.
The spoiled fillies smiled, drinking their peers' jealousy, both real and imagined.
But I'm sure it won't matter if you do decide to leave a few fun-sized treats in the dirt.
Grinned Diamond Tiara in a predatory fashion.
So the big bad princess won't gobble you up.
At that, the pair laughed uproariously. Apple Bloom and her friends just looked at each other. Sometimes Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon's sense of humor just didn't seem all that funny.
Yeah.
Even so, Apple Bloom wasn't one to back down from a challenge.
Well, we ain't gonna leave any of our candy then either. In fact, I bet we can collect more candy than you two, even with your fancy full-size candy bars.
Said the fiery-haired filly.
Oh, really? Care to make a bet then? Whoever has the most candy wins. Let's say the losers have to give up all their candy.
Said Silver Spoon, a grin playing at the corner of her mouth.
You're on!
Cried Scootaloo.
Now hold on, girls. You can't go crazy hoarding candy like that. Leaving an offering for Nightmare Moon is an important Nightmare Night tradition. Said
Pinkie Pie.
I mean, sure, it's tempting to hold on to all those gummy bears, and candy apples, and candy bars, and pixie sticks.
Oh my
and
god, pixie sticks.
And gumdrops and what were we talking about?
I love
The pink
pixie
pony
sticks.
fanned herself with a rubber bat, clearly flustered.
Oh, right. But you couldn't really keep them all for yourself. That's not what Nightmare Night is all about. Right? I guess you're right, Pinkie Pie.
Said Sweetie Belle, looking down sadly at her hoofs.
Backing out of our wager already then?
Asked
Oh,
Diamond
shut
Tiara
up,
with a
Diamond.
snide look on her face.
I guess it would be difficult for you blank flanks to compete with us if you're going to fall for all this tradition nonsense. Looks like we win by default.
What?
You'll expect your candy at the end of Nightmare Night. Don't go throwing too much of it away at the foot of some statue in the woods now. Now hold on.
Cried Apple Bloom.
We ain't gonna be throwing away any candy, and we ain't gonna be welching on no bet. You have your candy ready to fork over to us by the end of Nightmare Night, and may the best filly win. Maybe we should move on, girls.
Tried Pinkie Pie, a little nervous at how serious things had gotten between the young friends.
Who wants to help me decorate
Pinkie just got caught in the crossfire.
Pinkie Pie!
exclaimed Twilight Sparkle in bafflement.
What are you doing?
A gaggling of fillies and colts had invaded Twilight Sparkle's home and were clambering clumsily over her neatly arranged shelves. She and Spike had worked the better part of the afternoon taking the autumn audit of what books were checked out and what books were checked in, and what books were in need of repair before they could be returned to the shelves. Now, entire stacks of books were slipping, sliding, and plain being knocked over by careless little hooves. And in the middle of it all, Pinkie Pie stood cheerfully, half covered in fake spiderwebs and streamers.
Oh, hey, Twilight!
Said the pink pony, clearly delighted to see her friend. In the background, Snips and Snails tripped over one another in their efforts to hang bat-winged streamers along the stairs leading up to Twilight's room.
What?
They landed in a clumsily laughing heap that nearly toppled an entire shelf of books.
Bat-wing streamers?
I was hoping you'd be home soon.
Oh, Batman.
Said Pinkie Pie.
It's Batman.
Mayor Mare's having me decorate all the public buildings in Ponyville this year for Nightmare Night. But it wouldn't be half as much fun getting the library ready if I didn't have your input as well.
Pinkie Pie draped a forelimb over Twilight's shoulder and guided her through the barely controlled chaos of laughing and shouting children.
I was thinking bats everywhere, hanging from the ceiling and the stairs. Something to really catch every pony's eye when they walk in.
Twilight couldn't help being distracted as fillies ran back and forth, some trailing decorations in their wake, while others just seemed to be playing some kind of game.
But Pinkie, this is my
Ow.
home. We didn't decorate the library last year, inside or out.
I know, and I got to thinking that was a real shame. It's unfair that folks can only enjoy the fun of Nightmare Night downtown or in the big shops, and not in other places like boring post offices and libraries.
No one
Twilight
goes
glared at
there.
her friend.
No offense. I just wanted to make sure that no matter where a pony goes in Ponyville, that the spirit of Nightmare Night would be with them, you know?
Twilight stared into Pinkie Pie's sincere, grinning face. For all the bedlam, it was tough
Probably
to
should
face
save
that
this for when
hopeful,
something
well-meaning
happens.
smile and not cave just a little.
I guess, Pinkie Pie, if the mayor approves.
The party pony gave a happy little leap, pounding one hoof in the air before Twilight quickly added,
But please don't go overboard, and do your work quietly. This is still a library, and other ponies have the right to expect peace and quiet when they come here.
Pinkie Pie gave a little salute and seemed as though she was about to say something in reply when a loud crash came from the back of the room. With all the close calls,
Jeez.
it was a matter of time before an entire shelf of books would be
Rainbow?
knocked to the floor.
Rainbow Dash?
Far from any pony being hurt, however, the perpetrators were shouting at one another amid the wreckage of scattered books.
Rainbow Dash.
Diamond Tiara and Apple Bloom's animated argument threatened to damage the books further as each filly seemed to be stomping mad.
What?
Well, not.
Well, so.
Well, not.
Well, so. Girls! What's all this about?
Cried Twilight, using her magic to separate the fillies.
She started it. She keeps saying we're gonna chicken out, but I don't want to stand for her talking about us that way.
Cried a very agitated Apple Bloom.
Oh, please, Apple Blank.
Sneered Diamond Tiara.
Your insults
Like
aren't even
there's
good.
anything you can do about it.
Twilight settled the pair back to the floor but still held them back from each other. Twilight turned to Pinkie Pie as she struggled to keep the fillies from hurting themselves or any pony else.
What in Equestria are they talking about?
She demanded.
Oh, you know how kids are.
Mumbled the pink pony, smiling nervously.
We kind of have a bet going about who can collect the most candy.
Pinkie quickly added to the fillies.
But they're just going to have to collect that much more after they leave some for Nightmare Moon. Right, girls?
F.
Replied Silver Spoon flippantly, standing with her nose in the air next to her friend.
No way!
Retorted Scootaloo, jumping in the air and fluttering her little wings in irritation.
Leaving a tithe of candy for Nightmare Moon is one of the oldest traditions of Nightmare Night.
Said Twilight Sparkle, shocked.
No bet could be worth breaking from tradition like that. I mean, remember last year? Wasn't it fun to leave a little candy so Nightmare Moon wouldn't get you? Jeez, listen to her.
Said Diamond Tiara dismissively, sharing a glance with Silver Spoon.
You'd think she was just some common pony and not Celestia's student. Did you leave candy for your teacher's sister? Well, no, admitted Twilight. However, I did when I was younger. Every Nightmare Night, my brother and I would leave a little pile next to the statue in Canterlot. Though that was just a statue of Luna, not really Nightmare Moon. Celestia didn't seem to like the image of her sister as a monster. I remember when.
Twilight's eyes grew misty with memory, but Silver Spoon sighed heavily, interrupting her.
I'm sure you have many wonderful memories of the good old days. But do you really think Luna's going to get any pony that doesn't leave her candy? She didn't get you after all.
She pointed out disdainfully.
Of course not, silly. Twilight isn't a filly.
Laughed Pinkie Pie, trying to defuse the situation. Twilight, for her part, however, seemed to grow thoughtful.
No, I guess she's right, Pinkie Pie. There's no point in lying. Princess Luna may be a little strange, but she's not dangerous. Nightmare Night is fun to pretend, but honestly, I don't see any harm from them not giving up a bit of their candy, even if it is against tradition.
Pinkie Pie seemed genuinely shocked by her friend's words.
Don't listen to her, girls,
said Pinkie urgently.
We have these traditions for a reason. The decorations, the costumes, the jack-o'-lanterns, the offerings to Nightmare Moon. They were all started to protect us. There's no good reason to turn your back on all of that now. Not so close to Nightmare Night.
The usual jovial pony pleaded, her deep blue eyes wide with worry. The girls in Twilight gave Pinkie a funny look, not really understanding what all the fuss was
I
about.
almost forgot I was doing a reaction video.
I know it's around here somewhere.
Pinkie Pie started rummaging through the fallen books. It always amazed Twilight that regardless of how disorganized the library might become, Pinkie Pie could always turn up just the book she was looking for. She wouldn't normally have suspected it to be something to do with the party pony's Pinkie sense, but the alternative was that Pinkie Pie might have a better grasp of the library's organization than Twilight, Spike, and Owlicious combined. Somehow, that was a more unsettling conclusion than Pinkie's sixth sense.
Here it is.
The Pinkie sense.
Pinkie Pie cried triumphantly as she lifted an old dark book from one of the piles that were bound for the repair room. It didn't look like much, or even as if it had anything to do with Nightmare Night. Instead of the mare and the moon, a crescent eye, or some other Nightmare Night symbol, there was only a wood cut of a few pieces of candy carved into the cover.
Ye old tricks and treats. Wow, Pinkie, that book looks like it's seen better days.
Twilight examined the book closely. It was hard to tell if it had been damaged in the fall from the shelves or if it had already been in such poor shape.
You should put it back so Spike can fix it before it falls apart.
Twilight's magic enveloped the book, but Pinkie Pie held onto it firmly.
No, seriously, Twilight.
The party pony urged.
You and the girls should really read what this book has to say. There's more to Nightmare Night than just getting as much candy as possible.
Pinkie looked shocked at her own words, but struggled all the harder against the pull of Twilight's magic.
What?
And this is me saying that. You know how much I love sweets.
Yeah.
Let go, Pinkie.
Twilight strained, her magic insufficient to shake off her friend's oddly adamant grasp. By now, Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon had wandered away to make some other pony's life miserable, but the Cutie Mark Crusaders watched the struggle between Twilight and Pinkie Pie go back and forth. All three winced as a loud rip echoed throughout the library, and a cascade of book pages fluttered through the air. Between the two of them, Twilight and Pinkie managed to break the book's fragile spine, sending its delicate pages in all directions.
Nice.
Both ponies seemed shocked at what had happened. Started Apple Bloom.
We'll just head on now, Pinkie. I've got chores and I need to get going back home.
Yeah, and I promised Rainbow Dash I'd pick up her dry cleaning.
Added Scootaloo as she
What?
nudged a distracted
What?
Sweetie Belle.
Oh, yeah. And I need to make sure that, Rarity's order of new material for her Nightmare Night costume came in.
Managed Sweetie Belle, her eyes glued firmly on the floor. The trio scurried away before what would surely be an explosive argument between the two friends, but Sweetie Belle hung back a moment. Her eyes had lit on a few of the pages that had fallen from the old tattered book. No pony was looking as she discreetly stuffed the pages into her school bag and trotted quickly after her friends.
Oh, that's where. Okay, that's where it ends. I thought for sure Applejack lost narrator. Oh my god, lost this great Applejack. I was actually expecting something, like expecting a picture of what she found. No, that's it. okay. Yeah, I already saw half that video before doing this reaction. Cause I was like, I don't want to have to do another cupcake situation where I watched a video and I'm like, I should have done a reaction video to that. Seriously. Look up Lost Narrator Cupcakes. You should go right to it. That's the video I saw that I should have done a reaction to. Because that was... Jesus. That was like all sorts of looks from my face. Anyways. Like I said, this is a 5-part mini-series. So what I'm going to end up doing is... This is the first part. I'm going to be doing reactions to the other 4. So stay tuned for that. Oh yeah, did I mention that the name of the story is Something Sweet to Bite? Totally forgot to say that at the very beginning. But anyways, I digress. There's dust everywhere. I have to clean this thing, man. I don't know how long it's been. Anyways. I'm sure there's much more gore to be had as the story progresses. One thing I'm confused about, though, Apple Bloom was there at the very end, like towards the end of the story. Was what happened at the beginning what happens at the very end of the story or something like that? It's like a flashback kind of thing? I don't know. Anyways. I'm done. Stay tuned for part 2 of this little mini-series. And yeah, that's all I got. I'm very tired right now. As you can tell from the yawning towards the end. Jesus, man. Anyways, I'm done. This is going to take forever to render, so I'm going to leave it here. You guys stay tuned for more. Yeah, that's all I got. See ya.